quirky and downright flirty.
Don't call me that. Chelsea may be 100 years old this year, but it's far from past it. The event has an unrivaled reputation for cutting-edge ideas, setting trends and influencing our choices as gardeners. Tonight we'll be celebrating some of Chelsea's greatest eureka moments, but most of all looking forward to what comes next. Coming up on Cutting Edge Chelsea. Birthday surprise. Controversial artist Mark Quinn reveals his latest work, a specially commissioned centenary sculpture.
I wanted to make something about the way that we transform nature, when we buy plants.
The Gardener's Apprentice. Twice winner of Chelsea's Best in Show award, Cleve West and his teacher John Brooks reveal their shared passion for the future of garden design. And a Vikings approach. Writer and comedian Sandy Toksvig explains her garden step by step.
Me and Mr. David, who's my builder man, designed the entire garden on the back of an envelope. So I'm terribly worried that people will have a look and go, what was she thinking?
This year there are 34 large and small gardens vying for attention. At first glance, the aspirational planting and clever use of space appeal to the gardener in all of us. Who wouldn't want to design a Chelsea backyard? Dig a little deeper though, look beyond the aesthetics, and there's nearly always a hidden garden agenda lurking beneath the topsoil. Some designers want to provoke opinion, others to deliver a horticultural message. But then there are the visionary designs, those that dare to look forward to try and sow the seeds of change. Chris Beardshaw's taking a look at a possible gardening future.
One of the exciting things about the show gardens is that they allow the designers to indulge themselves in a feast of conceptual design. And that is really quite extraordinary because the designers can then explore ideas such as biodiversity and the need to include space for wildlife within our gardens. And that doesn't mean that you then have to compromise the design. And the Bruin Dolphin is a perfect example of how the two can sit comfortably together. Formal, geometric, it's ordered, it's really very sophisticated, and yet the planting is delightfully natural. It's all using species which you're very familiar with from our wildflower meadows, things like the anthriscus, lychnis, almeria, all just knitted together. It's slightly better choreographed than perhaps nature would orchestrate. However, the end result is that you end up with a wonderful palette. Nature is able to sweep in and enjoy, and to be honest, it doesn't matter whether it's a straight line or a curve. The bees will still arrive. The Wasteland, designed by Kate Gould, explores the notion of an ornamental woodland. Here at the back, the woodland star, the pride of place, is taken by this Enkianthus campanulatus. It's dripping with bells, fluted with the veins of magenta. It is the most extraordinary plant for an acid soil, and it's joined by other woodland dwellers, the vibrant shades of azaleas and rhododendrons, cornus, and step forwards and you emerge from the woodland into woodland edge. Typical herbaceous planting, bountiful, feminine and delightful. Peonies are joined by camasias, geraniums and alliums. It's got a real delicacy to it. But what's unusual about this scheme is that it's not just about the planting, because when you explore the hard landscaping, what you're faced with is industrial and very aggressive, traditionally rejected architecture, concrete, steel, outfalls, even shopping trolleys in this garden. And the whole story is about perhaps reconsidering our impressions of architecture, because if we get the right veil of femininity of planting over the surface, a garden can emerge in the most unlikely of places. The Sonic Pangaea, designed by Passarotti Pucci, is a wonderful piece of work that explores a classical myth. We're in a sacred forest. There's no trees here, but they're represented in a stylized form by these shafts of steel and aluminium. The slits that run down them emit light as if the sunshine is filtering through a dappled canopy. And the sounds we can hear, well, they're digitized, artificial sounds, capturing the spirit of the wildlife and the rain dripping through the canopy or a burbling stream. Within the sacred grove, there is a brass altar to Pan, and at the opposite end, a chaise longue for Gaia. This is the sort of garden that encourages you to explore, to contemplate, to think. And it's also about stimulating the senses, from peppery capsicums here, wonderful nasturtiums spilling over in their vibrant shades, and then aromatic basils as you brush through. The wonderful thing about these show gardens is that not everything you see is necessarily directly transferable to our own plots, but you can be sure that this ability to think conceptually will eventually, in some way, filter down into our own plots.
Sculpture has been used in the garden for many years, adding a narrative definition, of course, a visual focal point too. And here at Chelsea, there is so much inspiration. It gives you ideas of how you can use sculpture in your own garden. This is on Ulf Nordfeld's garden. It's an absolutely beautiful bronze. It's of Orpheus, the master of music and song in Greek mythology. And it was made by Carl Mills. It's wonderful. And what I like about it is the way it's got this backdrop of a hornbeam hedge. Don't just fill in loads of plants and make it too messy. Make it sing out. After all, this is a classical sculpture in a classical garden. Chris Beardshaw has used 3 figurative sculptures on his garden, which all tell the story of living with arthritis. 2 of them are by a sculptor called Anna Gillespie, and this one is absolutely absorbing. It's called To the Limit, and it's got a great energy about it. It feels as if the wind is just blowing right across it. It's in weathered bronze, and it can be seen right from the front of the garden, and it uses the long view beautifully. So the sighting of this piece at the end, with the yew backdrop behind, is just perfect. Her other piece is on the other side of the yew hedge, adjacent to the glass room. Now, this is made of bronze, but it's studded with woodland acorn, which creates an amazing texture. I think it's one of my favourites at the whole show. And what I like about it is it's got no plants around it at all, so it really feels like a sculpture in an art gallery. The third sculpture in this garden is this wirework piece by Michel Castles, and it was commissioned specifically for the garden. It's called Libertine, and it reflects the freedom from the pain. I love the way it comes out of the planting here with these echiums straddling at either side. Now, you might think, well, I can do that, just buy some wire mesh or some chicken wire and have a go at it myself. I think if you're going to start, then you should maybe take on an easier shape than that beautiful figure, just for your first attempt. But of course, sculpture in the garden doesn't really have to be sculpture at all. It can be something that looks sculptural and sits in amongst the planting. It can be homemade, made from recycled materials, whatever. Here, Philip Johnson, the designer, has created this lovely beehive out of recycled materials. It's got a rusty old wheel with bits of bamboo and different types of timber with holes drilled in it to create a habitat for the solitary bee. So it's not only a lovely sculptural form in amongst the planting, it's great for wildlife too.
Adam Frost's sculpted beehive has been causing a buzz on his Sowing the Seeds of Change garden. You can find out more about the message behind his gold medal winning garden by pressing your red button straight after the show. Now, if you're after cutting-edge sculpture, then Mark Quinn's your man. Never one to shy away from controversy. His work includes Alison Lapper Pregnant. It occupied the 4th plinth in Trafalgar Square until 2007, and he also created Planet, a giant 7-month-old floating baby. His latest work has brought him to Chelsea. We're standing in front of it. Mark, a whacking great painted, sculpted orchid.
That's
Beautiful
right.
piece of work. Why that?
Well, I wanted to make something about the transition between artificial nature, real nature, the way that we transform nature, you know, when we buy plants.
So it's man influencing nature.
It's man influencing nature in a way. And by doing this layering of paint, where I put 18 layers and then rubbed it back, you get the colours coming through. It seemed to me like almost like an X-ray photograph of the heat or the energy of nature flowing through this plant.
So underneath it is bronze.
It's bronze, yes. Yeah. So it's an outdoor sculpture.
So how do you start?
Start with a tiny flower that I buy in the nursery.
Yes.
Then I make a mould of that actually. Yeah. Then I make a bigger one in clay, and then a bigger one, and then finally the big size, and then mould that, cast in bronze, and do the painting layering, and then rub that back.
It's a very generous thing to do because this is going to be auctioned online for the RHS appeal for Horticulture Matters, which is getting more and more young people into it. So, does horticulture matter to you? You clearly come to Chelsea and enjoy it.
The planet, the environment, nature, of course it matters. It's one of the most important themes in my work and things in the world. And I think the future's young people. So to help young people get into gardening seems to be a no-brainer, really.
Very nice. I'm so glad you said that. What about the show itself? Do you like coming?
I love it. I've come every year for the last 5 or 6 years, fighting the old ladies on the last day to buy flowers to photograph or to turn into sculptures. So when the RHS asked me to do the garden, it seemed it was a no-brainer.
Yeah. Well, we wish you well with it. I hope it goes. It's been a great eye-catcher here, reflected in the water and clearly enjoyed in the sunshine.
I love seeing it here.
Good to meet you. Well, Chelsea's grown from strength to strength over the last century because the exhibitors continuously prove their ability to accurately capture the horticultural mood of the moment. They set the trends rather than following them. This year, brothers Paul and Tom Harfleet have chosen the world of social networking as the theme for their fresh garden at Chelsea. We caught up with them at home, pondering their latest design at the kitchen table and getting ready to launch their creation to an ever-burgeoning online world.
What does the garden represent?
I think it should be about new ideas.
I think it's the opportunity to explore new technology in a garden context.
I feel it represents a glimpse into the future of garden design. Definitely about the future of garden design.
Social media is really interesting. It's changed my practice, definitely, because as an artist, you're always thinking about what you're doing. And Twitter and Facebook can capture that really quickly and really easily, and you can share ideas really easily. Harfleet and Harfleet has become another platform to share these sorts of ideas through the animations that we make and the images we take.
My background in horticulture and landscape design and his background in fine art, we were always going to find that one project that connected us.
I'm interested in the collaboration in terms of it being more about the thinking and what conceptual thoughts can be supporting a garden and a design.
He makes my work better because he looks at things in a different way.
Tom is much more about the sort of facilitating those designs and the kind of the innovation in design technology.
He'll look at it very much as a piece of art where I'm having to look at it slightly more practically in actually how we're going to build that.
I think that's why it works really well. In 2010, the RHS Hampton Court Palace Flower Show, we first collaborated on the Pansy Project garden. The Pansy Project is a concept I devised about 7 or 8 years ago, where I plant pansies at the site of homophobic abuse on the streets. And Tom thought that it would be a really interesting idea to bring that into a garden context. And we got a gold medal and Best Conceptual Garden, which was amazing. This is our first garden at Chelsea. It's called Digital Capabilities. When we were approached by the University of Lincoln, we were asked to kind of think about designing a garden that somehow communicated the complexities of social networking.
It's all about social media and fitting that into a garden.
So there's a main structure that will be operated by Twitter. People will be able to tweet the garden and different elements of the garden will be revealed. So the front area is a sort of more familiar planting, and the back is going to be sort of a more exotic, jungly type look, which is intended to demonstrate the geographical leap you can make with Twitter.
That's what we're trying to get across using the wall as a metaphor showing how social networking closes geographical gaps. We decided to take our structure from the Pansy Project Garden to actually create the wall, so we've got this really dynamic 3D movable wall. There's 21 individual pieces that move, all with these motors that are originally from car boots. We've got this animation demonstrates how the wall will actually flow. So as you tweet, these things will slowly open and close, and the more people tweet and interact with it, the more the rear garden becomes exposed.
Tom, Paul, fantastic garden. So much innovation. It's great to see it at Chelsea. It's just the sort of thing what I like to see anyway. And you got a gold medal.
We did, yeah.
So the judges loved it too. How does that feel?
Pretty amazing, actually. It's our first Chelsea garden, so it's a real thrill.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been cool.
And everybody out there loves it too because they've actually been interacting with this garden.
Yeah.
Explain, I'm a bit of a technopro, keep it simple, but how does this work?
It searches Twitter for the words RHS, Chelsea and garden. So each one of these panels is when the computer picks that word up. Each movement is someone tweeting anywhere in the world.
So people anywhere in the world are controlling these panels?
Yeah. So it's a physical representation of what the social media chat is about the show.
Right, okay. The thing about it is, though, from outside, you can't actually see the garden within at any one time.
No, so if you tweet at the garden and you write the word snap, it actually sends you a picture, real time.
It sends you a picture of the garden in real time, at that moment, anywhere in the world?
Anywhere in the world.
Day or night?
Day or night.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It really is. So you're really opening up.
Yeah.
In fact, do you think that you might have another idea like this, or better even, to come back next year?
Well, we're talking about it and thinking
you've already
about
got
it.
ideas?
Well, we always have ideas.
Some of them aren't very good.
This one, of course, is.
I love the way you have to come up with the idea. You've got to make it work somehow. That's the tricky bit. So it's a great team effort. Lovely to see you. Have a good show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Some would say interruptions from phones, emails or social media while you're out in your garden negates the very reason many of us retreat there in the first place. In peace and quiet, not a hashtag in sight. Our outdoor spaces have evolved beyond recognition over the last century, but we have pioneer garden designer John Brooks to thank for the concept of the room outside in the 1970s. Many have been taught by him over the years, including Cleve West, winner of Chelsea's Best in Show award for the last 2 years. And I have to say, John, myself, I was an earlier pupil of you, much earlier than Cleve. Was there a eureka moment in that it was late 60s, early 70s with this room outside idea, and the book that you wrote called that, you know, so it was a big concept.
Yes, we were suddenly looking at smaller gardens and new developments, and with smaller gardens you start looking at the proportions of the house it adjoins and taking those proportions out into the garden.
So it became a roofless room, in a way.
Sort of, in a way, and a place for sort of family usage.
In a way, that's reflected in most of the gardens we have here today, Cleve. I mean, would you argue that John's, you know, iconoclastic approach here is something which still reverberates today?
Oh, definitely, and it will for as long as we have towns and, you know, small gardens, definitely. And if you look at the artisan gardens, which I thought were some of the best things at Chelsea this year, you can see it working there as well with those natural plants we were talking about.
Yeah.
When you look at the show now and see what's going on, what do you think where are we going now, Master, as it were, you know, what's happening?
I have no magic insight, but it does seem to me we're getting a feeling for wildness very much coming through. They've all got cow parsnip on their stands for a start.
Yeah.
But we get stands like that of Christopher Bradley Hole, who's really analysing what landscape is all about and reinterpreting it. And there are native gardens with just native plants.
And this is something that's affecting all garden designers, you think, Cleve? Is it affecting you? Is this something you feel in your bones?
It's something I'm comfortable with, yes. And I know a lot of my fellow designers are also big on the perennial scene, and but shrubs are sort of creeping back, I've noticed. And I've got a client who wants pink roses, so I'm really working hard on that one.
A Guinness, no doubt. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with a pink rose. Look, thanks to both of you for coming up here. Two great influences in terms of garden design. Good to see you both again.
Thank you.
Well, thanks to John, the concept of using our gardens as an extension of the house is now a given. These days, there's no end to the innovation designers come up with to assist with al fresco relaxation. Joe's been taking a look.
The idea of the outdoor room is certainly on the rise, but here in the Seeds of Change garden, designer Adam Frost has taken it one step further. He's pretty much created an entire house, complete with dining room, kitchen, pantry, an outdoor classroom and playground too. When I'm designing a garden, I always think about where I'm going to put the seating area first and then work off that. And I'm always as generous as possible with space too, like Adam's been here. When you're seated, you really feel like you're in amongst the planting. You've got a vantage point across the whole garden. You don't just feel like you're stuck on the back of the house. Now this is the kitchen area, complete with bespoke barbecue. Obviously you're not all going to get one of these. You might go to the shop and buy one, but think about integrating it into the space rather than looking like an afterthought. Talking of integration, Adam's really thought about the insects that are going to pollinate all the fruit and vegetable in the living pantry. He's built into the walls these lovely little bits of timber and drilled holes in them so it doesn't feel like a barren, sterile space. Now this garden is 250 square metres. Not everybody has a garden this big, do they? This garden is absolutely exquisite. And it's tiny. The entire garden is 5 metres by 7, and in it it's got this lovely little tatami room, which takes its name from the tatami mat, this rice straw mat that I'm sitting on. And in here you bring very important people and make some pretty important decisions while you're looking over the miniature landscape beyond. But if, like me, you don't know anybody very important, you're going to have the whole place to yourself. I could just sit here all day. Lovely to have some time to yourself, but of course we all have to be a bit more outward facing and communicate with the larger world around us, and that's what this garden reflects. It has a dual personality. Over on this side everything's structured and completely open so that the public can see you, including these tall concrete plinths that run through. But over here it's a different story. Oh, it's lovely in here. You come down 3 steps and you're into a sunken garden with a very different feel. It's very secluded, very private space. And rather than overlooking the plants as I was over there, here you feel like the plants are overlooking you. And that's a good tip, is trying to get plants up to eye level so you're looking through them. And they also soften the architecture, like this lovely Mullembeckia breaking the edge of the wall and the epimedium and lovely fresh green leaves next to it. So the idea of an outdoor room is not particularly new in a garden, but there's many interpretations of that concept here at Chelsea. As gardeners, we're constantly learning and evolving, and it's fair to say we're playing catch-up to all-knowing nature most of the time. Plants have been cleverly adapting to our ever-changing world for millions of years. Carol's in the Great Pavilion looking beyond the blooms to see how plants are geniuses when it comes to pollination, many evolving complex relationships with other life forms to ensure their survival.
Here in the Great Pavilion, it's flowers, flowers, flowers everywhere. We tend to think that flowers are just there for our delight and delectation, but not a bit of it. In actual fact, they're to attract pollinators. It's all about floral fornication. Plants, like every life form on the planet, including us, need to reproduce. In their case, they need to spread the pollen from the anthers, the male bit, onto the stigma, the female bit of another flower. It's really vital to keep that gene pool as diverse as possible. But what are they going to do? They've got their roots firmly into the ground. They can't get up and find a mate. Obviously, somebody else is involved. They employ the services of birds, bees, butterflies, and even bats to transfer pollen from one flower to another. If you're a flower and you want to get pollinated, you've got to offer something in return. Most of the time that's nectar, but in the case of Diacia, it's something quite different. The pollinator for Diacia is a very specific sort of bee. It's got very long front legs, and in the back of the Diacia flower are these 2 spurs. which are filled with this precious oil. The bee uses them both to feed its larvae and to build its nest. In it goes with the long legs, deep into the flower. As it does so, it's dusted with pollen, flies off, and both partners are happy. This is Strelitzia, the bird of paradise flower from South Africa. In its native haunts, there are loads of sunbirds. And what happens is they fly down to the flower, looking for a nectar treat deep within it. They land on this bit of the flower, and their weight opens it up, exposing the pollen. Their feet and their feathers are dusted with it. When they've drunk deep, off they fly to another flower. Just look at this lovely peony, still dusted with pollen, but deep in the centre, the ovaries are swelling and seed is beginning to set. You can tell sex has occurred.
All week we've been meeting some well-known faces who don't take much persuading to talk about their passion for gardening. Comedian and writer Sally Toxvig was introduced to Chelsea by her green-fingered mum. Last week she gave us an exclusive look around her garden on the Kent coast and shared her plans for not just one but 4 different outside spaces.
It is the place where I relax. I grew up near the sea. We had a house facing the Long Island Sound in America. And there's something about it, must be the Viking in me, I think, because the minute I arrive, my shoulders sink about 6 inches and everything seems all right with the world. We've been here about 3 years, and first we were doing the house up, which took up an enormous amount of time, and then we turned our attention to the garden. It was a slope. It had been neglected for many years. There was all sorts of rubbish and Japanese knotweed and I don't know what else. And me and Mr. David, who's my builder man, who is just a genius, designed the entire garden on the back of an envelope. And we'd quite often stand in the garden and go, oh, that's not quite working, let's do something else. So I'm terribly worried that people will have a look and go, what was she thinking? And that I've made a terrible mess of it. Because that, honestly, it was done with a chat and a cup of tea. We've had the garden terraced. So we have an area now for eating and for cooking. We have an area for playing games. I love to play games in the garden, as do my children. Where I'm sitting now is what I think of as the grown-up area, so it's slightly more meditative. And then the area where I have my study, where I sit and write with uninterrupted views of the sea. How great is that? Everybody talks about when the Vikings arrived in Britain and the bad things that they did, and I don't think it's true. I think they came with some nice sweaters to sell, a bit of herring, and a game. And this is an ancient Viking game. It's called Cub. There are 2 teams, and you have soldiers, effectively, these wooden blocks, and then there is the king. And the object is to get rid of the other side's soldiers and finally to capture the king. But if you knock the king over by mistake, you have immediately lost. And it's one of those games, fantastically simple, deceptively simple. We have had cub games that have lasted for 4 or 5 hours, and that's the referee just there. The thing about the referee is I'm the only person in the entire family who speaks referee, so when she makes an adjudication, I'm afraid I have to interpret. I win quite a lot. I'm a keen gardener, I like it, but I don't know a huge amount about it. And what I have noticed in the few things that I've planted out already is that not everything takes to the sea air. I put in some lavender last year, and that seems to have done very well indeed, so I'm hoping to do a whole bank of lavender. I also like to grow some things to eat, and we've put in a little bit of rhubarb, and at the moment, it's still with us, so I'm very hopeful. And I'm terribly impressed with this old tree, which has been here for a very long time. And I thought at first it was dead, but it actually seems to be doing extremely well. So this is a survivor, and there must be specific things which will do well, and I want to find out what those are. already have the dream view, the one that I absolutely wanted to have, which is the sense and feeling of the sea, which I absolutely love. The next thing I'd like, of course, lots of colour. Colour would be wonderful. We have this great blank canvas now, but I'm slightly obsessed with fragrance. I want a garden that makes you feel slightly heady when you walk into it. I love those strong smelling, I don't know what could grow here, jasmines or honeysuckles. I'll have to find out what they are. But the things that would attract the butterflies, and to have the birds come as well. We've got a couple of nice bird baths and bird feeder, and I want to encourage the local wildlife to come and visit.
What a blissful spot.
How lucky am I?
How lucky are you?
I know.
I have to say this, Sandy, not a lot of plant material.
No, see, this is the thing, and also I felt terribly embarrassed showing it to you in any way at all, because we did literally do it on the back of an envelope, but I think the basics are there.
It works. That Viking game looks great. That could catch on.
It is so much fun, and it's one of those games that you think it's going to be easy, and actually it can turn in a moment, and anybody can play. What I love about it is the little ones, the 4-year-olds can throw a stick, and the 84-year-olds can throw a stick and still have a good time. It's great.
You looked scarily good at it, I have to say.
Too much practice.
Don't join with something at your peril. But clearly there's a desire on your part to, now that you've got the framework. I always say about gardening, it's the reverse of painting a picture and finding a frame for it. With gardening, you make the frame and then you put the picture inside it. So you've got plenty of scope here today, presumably, to find that frame.
Oh, it's fantastic, and I also know the different things that I want in the garden. I want there's 4 terraces, and I want each one of them to have a slightly different feel to it. So, for example, something a bit meditative, a bit fragrant, and I want it to be a calm place. So I need to find the right plants for that. Unfortunately, I don't know what's going to last, because I know from my car how salty it is there.
And you'll find that time of the year, late summer, when the salt spray's blown in, a lot of stuff starts to get a bit burned. But there are guys out here who know all about seaside plants, and things with hairy leaves are quite good. And there's lots of plants like Estonia and the tamarix, which will give you a shelter belt to break down the wind before it actually gets into the garden. They're all out there. Fantastic. What I want to know is, I mean, have you been here before?
Many times. I'm afraid I'm a regular. I absolutely love it. I don't have the time to garden, but I'm always inspired every time I come here. And this garden, this is the first time I've been able to start from scratch. So I'm going to look at, I think, at the show in a very different way.
I love that way you said, I come out here and my shoulders go down. And I think that's why a lot of people come here, because you look at them over the course of the week, 165,000 of them, who come here. It's relaxation, but it's a passion as well.
Yeah. Oh, and do you know what I love about it as well? There is a lot of people here, but everybody gets a chance to have a look. And if you just say, excuse me for a moment, everybody's friendly because everybody's here with the same purpose. There's no aggression in the crowd. It's just a really lovely day out, and the sun's come out.
Did you have parental encouragement when you were little?
My grandfather was a very, very keen gardener, and my mum's got a wonderful garden. I mean, really fantastic. We call it the secret garden because it seems to have lots of little bits and pieces in it. And that's the other thing, is I think a garden ought to surprise you. There ought to be moments when you just think, oh, I wasn't expecting that plant, or or something funny, or something quirky. I like those things too.
It's interesting what you say about the nature of the people you meet here. I mean, do you approve of gardeners then as a race? Do you think we're not a bad lot?
They seem very nice to me. And do you know what it is? It's that everybody's very nicely dressed today, of course, because they're out for the day. But nobody here is scared to get their hands into the soil and to really dig down deep and try and make the thing grow as best they can. And I love that element of it. I'm afraid I like getting quite grubby in the garden.
No, well, you're a proper gardener then. We'll let you get down and dirty later, because we want you to go out there and get sorted out with some of these plants. You will find them. We can transform that garden for you. And Sandy will be back later letting us tag along as he takes a look around the show. Thanks, Sandy. There's still plenty to come on tonight's programme. A bit of a blarney. Dermot Gavin shares his memories of Chelsea and tells us what he thinks of the centenary show.
It's not a great Chelsea.
In your opinion?
Sorry, absolutely, in my opinion.
Hallelujah Eucharas. Rachel's in the Great Pavilion, celebrating one of the nation's perennial favourites.
The Eucharaholics display is showcasing 2 brand new varieties never yet seen in the UK.
And the jewels in the town. Alpine grower Chris Birchall brings his precious plants to Chelsea for the very first time.
You don't know if your plants will be ready, whether they'll be of a standard. I'm sure it will work out all right on the day, I think. I hope.
Over the last 100 years, the Chelsea Flower Show has been patronised by plantsmen and designers whose families can trace their history way back to the early days of the show. Alan Bloom was a famous name who showed here in 1931. His son Adrian flew the flag from the 1960s and continues to build on his family's reputation for horticultural innovation. Adrian, your father Alan was the man known for border perennials. You were known for heathers and conifers in the 60s and 70s, but also as a man who brought a bit of pizzazz and showmanship to Chelsea.
Yes, well, we certainly brought conifers, which were even then not all that popular in those years, and the dwarf and slow-growing types was one that I started to collect and grow on the nursery and then bring to Chelsea. So my father had the perennials, I needed to have something myself. But we also had other plants too, like Potentilla red ace, which was the first shrub to be protected or plant breeders' rights. And that was one because somebody had attempted to steal a cutting at the autumn show the previous September. I thought, well, this is a very valuable plant. We'd better have a security guard put on it.
So the first plant with a security guard.
And there always has to be a first one. But so we had a stand on its own, plus we had a conifer exhibit in the marquee and another perennial exhibit. So we did cover Chelsea quite a bit.
But there were some other plants as well, plants that we still use today. You were first to bring them to Chelsea, like these two beauties. Heuchera, Palace Purple, I use it all the time, and Geranium Roseanne.
Yes, well, the Palace Purple, of course, was a seedling that was raised at Kew. We showed it for the first time in 1983 and probably didn't realise what it would lead to, but that's another story. As far as Geranium Roseanne is concerned, that was one that was just a chance seedling that somebody sent to me and said they think this is a winner, this hybrid hardy geranium. Yeah. And they named it after the lady herself, Roseanne. Took us a long time to get it sort of produced and then available to show at Chelsea, and we had an exhibit where it flowed down as a river to the side of the stand.
Yeah, it really are examples, these, aren't they, of the rest is history. Plants that really do change the face of the world. These two plants played an important role in Chelsea's 100-year history, so much so they've both been specially chosen by the RHS as a plant of the decade. There are 10 plants in total, one for each of the 10 decades of Chelsea. On Saturday, one of these plants will go on to be crowned RHS Plant for Centenary, and that prestigious award is to be decided by you. To find out more about the plants and register your vote, go to our website and follow the link.
Now, Adrian's Heuchera Palace Purple caused a huge sensation when he launched it at Chelsea in 1983. Since then, this perennial favourite has become a must-have in our borders. Rachel's in the Great Pavilion discovering why we should all be shouting hallelujah for Heucheras.
Since Adrian introduced Palace Purple back in the 80s, there has been something of an explosion in breeding new Heucheras. In fact, there are close to 1,000 now to choose from, with something for everyone. Heucheras are natives of wooded and rocky sites in North America, with some species hailing from Mexico. They're wonderful for filling gaps towards the front of the border, where they provide an excellent foil to other flowering perennials. The Heucheraholics display is showcasing two brand new varieties never yet seen in the UK. This one, it's called Rio's, got large leaves in the colour of a copper kettle. And then this one, slightly smaller foliage called Bell Knot, but that beautiful, sumptuous dark colouring. And it has lovely pink flowers, quite large, in the colour of crushed raspberries. Not only are they beautiful, but they'll also take sun. You can grow them in nice, open, south-facing position. Normally Heucheras prefer a little bit more shade. So I think on many counts, these are going to be winners. Also making their UK debut, 3 brand new varieties here on the Plant A Go-Go stand. We have got Cocoa and Blondie and Sweetheart, lovely and compact, each one of them, and covered in flowers from spring right through until the autumn. So what are your top tips for getting the very best from Heucheras?
Okay, well, they don't like to be waterlogged, they hate that, that kills them. If they've got growth at the bottom and growth at the top, you need to just snap those tall leggy bits off and that growth at the bottom will come on. If they've just got growth at the top, take the whole thing and bury it lower, but don't bury the crowns. They're hardy to -20, evergreen, the bees love them. What's not to like about them, really?
Here on the Stoke-on-Trent Story of Transformation garden, they're using Heucheras exactly as I like to do in my own garden. Just look here, filling the front of the border here with colour, and it also picks up on this peony. Beautiful the way they're working together. And again, just through here, wonderful dark red rose, also that colour working beautifully together. And they've even got them up on the green wall over there. Now that I haven't done in my own garden before, but having seen it, I just might.
From heuchers making a statement to designers making an impression. Designer Dermot Gavin's been a regular at Chelsea over the years, and his gardens have always caused a stir. Welcome, nice to see you again. What was the first moment? When did you first get in here?
I wandered in with a wheelbarrow. I'd walked around Sloane Square, wheelbarrow, 2 shovels, 2 spades. Came in here just to that plot where Flemings are. 300 quid in my pockets, 3 weeks to
And then let you make a garden? Because somebody had dropped out?
Somebody dropped out 6 months before. They'd rejected our plans, but I said then, please come and do it.
And we did it. We now remember the lottery balls, the National Lottery Garden with those great sort of coloured balls on the top. You always seem to want to cause a stir. It wasn't you just designing a garden for you. It was to say, hey, look at this.
No, that isn't true. It is the impression. I don't want to cause a stir. I want to create my childhood dream. I want to create gardens for me. I want to create gardens that inspire children, maybe. Yes, the byproduct is that people, you know, get into a big, there's big stuff about it. But it's just, I see the world and I see gardens in a different way to most people.
Well, last year you saw a pyramid stacked high with Chelsea pensioners. So what?
Yeah.
I can't quite see anybody coming up and saying, I'll have that. I've got 120 Chelsea pensioners. I need to put them somewhere.
It's not the point, though, is it? The point
So
is
what is
to
the point?
stimulate imagination, and to try and, in that particular case, you know, with the increased urbanisation of society, could we garden on a limited footprint above each other? So experiments, fun, fantasy.
But that was
not
your
taking
tower
it too
block
seriously.
in effect.
Yes.
You don't do that. Talking about, I mean, you've looked around now, you've been here a few days. What do you make of it this year? What's grabbed you? What don't you like?
When I came in on Monday, I was sad. It's not a great Chelsea. You know, Chelsea's always wonderful.
In
it's
your
always
opinion?
brilliant. Sorry, absolutely, in my opinion. And I hesitate to say that because I know what everybody's been through for each and every
But why
garden.
do you think it's not great?
There's not a lot of great imagination around. Now, I love Flemings, what Philip has done there. Absolutely wonderful. I love a guy planting barley in a patch. I love Stoke-on-Trent, the potteries, and I love the NSPCC garden. There are vignettes, there are beautiful pictures.
But we've got cutting-edge designers here like Christopher Bradley Hole and Ulf Nordfield. I mean, surely they'd get to your soul, wouldn't they?
They're all very nice. In a way, I've seen it all before, and they do the particular gardens, not wanting to, you know, mention any particular plots, but they lack passion. There's something not there this year. I'm a bit sad about that for its 100th year. It seems to be the same. If I was a kid watching at home, I would say, why would I want to be a gardener? Why would I want to be a garden designer? There's nothing that jumps out at me to bring me in.
Would you come back? Would you come back?
Oh, it's my home. It's my soul. Chelsea changed my life. The RHS are the best organisation in the world. They give you the opportunity to show off. You know, they give you the audience, the facility. I'll be back in a moment if that
You're back in a moment with balls, with pyramids, with Chelsea pensioners, with something.
I have another idea.
Oh, have you?
Yeah.
Oh, it seems a bit like Michael Caine at the end of The Italian Job. Hang on a minute. I've got an idea. When he's got an idea, be very afraid. Now, Dermot may be a regular face here at Chelsea, but for alpine grower Chris Birchall from Tail Valley Nursery, the centenary year is to be his first time. We visited him last month as he prepared his prize plants for the most famous flower show in the world.
They're so small, compact, intricate, innocent in a way. They're my life. I'm sure I'll keep growing them until, you know, the day I die.
Let there be love.
They're not just flowers. You get, you know, some beautiful foliage on alpines, different colours, different textures. It's the whole just plant concept in miniature. The true definition of an alpine plant is a plant which grows above the tree line. The actual Alpine Garden Society has extended, I suppose, the definition of an alpine, and with regard to the Alpine Garden Society, an alpine plant is a plant which is suitable for growing in anything up to a large rock garden, or a plant you can grow in a glasshouse situation without heating. A sempervivum, or house leek, as it's commonly called, are a true alpine plant. The majority of them grow in the mountains of Europe. They grow on rocks in very sunny, open, exposed areas. It's one plant which we get asked, can I grow them on a windowsill at home? Unfortunately, I wouldn't recommend them for that because they do need very good light. And even on a south-facing windowsill at home, they would lose the colour. These are Rhodohypoxis. Now, this is a plant we have our national collection of, which grows high up in the Drakensberg Mountains in South Africa and into Lesotho at altitude. I remember my parents growing them when I was 5 or 6 years old. So these are possibly, without knowing it at the time, the plant which sparked my interest in alpines. They bulk up by producing a combination of rhizomatous growth, where they put a little rhizome out and a new corm will form at the end of these, and just general multiplication of the corms themselves. So propagation each year, we will pull them apart in the spring, and from a plant that size, by the end of next year, we'll probably have something where we'll get about 4 separate plants out of it. They are cold hardy, they are not cold wet hardy. So in a garden situation, you need very well drained soil to be able to grow them outside successfully. One of the biggest myths about alpine plants is that they are difficult to grow. High altitude alpines can be difficult, and they do need a little bit more care and attention. But there are so many alpine plants which are just good garden plants. It'd be easy to start with alpine. You've got to think of something like phlox, which are flowering April, May time. If you've got a shady garden, you could consider soldanellas, and the saxifrages will flower from February right through until July, even into August time. There's a various range of saxifrages. Again, some will take good sunny conditions, others prefer it in the shade. I've always been competitive, and I don't believe in doing anything unless you can do it to the best of your ability. You've got to say you're going for the top. That's what you're going for. Whether we can achieve it is a totally different thing. Certainly Chelsea, I had no idea I'd be exhibiting there within 6 years of starting the business off. So in that sense, things have moved very quickly. It's exciting, although it's also, one has to be a little bit apprehensive because you don't know if your plants will be ready, whether they'll be of a standard, but I'm sure it will work out all right on the day. I think, hope.
Chris, first time at Chelsea, a gold medal. You must be feeling amazing.
Yeah, we've certainly got a feeling of pride and relief.
Pride more than relief, I
Pride
hope.
more than relief, yes.
Yeah, I know that the pressure was on. It's been a very difficult growing season for you, hasn't it?
It has. We've had a late spring, and it has been hard to get some things how we wanted them.
But you've got amazing colour here, and that's what everybody wants to see. Run us through some of these beautiful alpines, especially the bright, colourful ones.
Well, the Rhodohypoxis, this time of year, they're a star in the garden, and they will flower right through June into July. So they would be the...
And particular varieties?
Well, the new double ones, things like Hope and Kiwi Joy are nice tight button types, and then you get the bright whites and the reds like Starlet and Annalise.
Yeah. And you've got your gold first time. Do you think you're going to be coming back?
Certainly think about coming back. I'd like to do a different display just for that variety, to tax myself and provide something different for the public.
Well, you've done a fantastic job with these little beauties. Lovely to meet you.
Thank you.
Now, if you prefer your plants to make an impact on a larger scale, why not choose one of the floral stars of the season, affectionately known as Granny's Bonnet and Doves in a Basket? Chris has been finding out why this year the Aquilegia is one of the stars of the gardens.
One of the most commonly grown forms is this, Aquilegia alpina. As the species name alpina suggests, it originates from the Alps, the mountainous regions of France and Switzerland. And the common name of this plant, columbine, is clearly demonstrated here. Columbine refers to the Latin dove, and if you use your imagination, here are the heads of 5 doves, the wings outsplayed, drinking from the same fountain. But this is one of a number of garden-worthy plants. For instance, Aquilegia chrysantha yellow queen from the meadows of New Mexico. And what's unusual is the spurs on the back of the flower, the fact it turns slightly, it's more optimistic. They can be peppered like little explosions, firecrackers, throughout a border, enlivening them, bringing a sense of animation, fun and informality. One of the peculiar things about Aquilegias, if you introduce them into the garden, you can be sure that they will cross and hybridize. They're fantastically gregarious and promiscuous, which means that if you have one, you'll then find huge variation in colours, textures and forms throughout your garden. But occasionally a form arises which is relatively stable, and that's typical of the Barlow series, here with its petticoat, pom-poms and spurless blooms. And the name Barlow comes from Nora Barlow, who was Charles Darwin's granddaughter, a very resolute and rather fearsome woman apparently, which in a strange way is appropriate because this plant retains its essential double nodded head characteristics despite the fact that it will cross and seed throughout the garden. Aquilegias have persisted in our gardens for over 400 years, partially because of their promiscuity, but also because they produce huge quantities of seed that blow into every crack and crevice where they're able to grow. And they're also fantastically amiable. Any area where there's reasonable amount of moisture in the soil, be it rich or infertile. But here they're demonstrated wonderfully well with Iris sibirica and the wetland grass. They're also members of the buttercup family, which means they contain toxins which deter slugs, snails, rabbits and deer from grazing on them. So the one thing guaranteed is that once you've introduced them, you'll never be without them.
Aquilegia, Granny's Bonnet, Columbine, they're all lovely names, aren't they, for lovely flowers. Now, earlier, writer, presenter and comedian Sandy Toksvig joined us to explain why a trip to Chelsea was a good opportunity to get some plant inspiration for her salty seaside garden. We tagged along as she battled through the crowds to take a look around the show.
Yeah, I'm so happy because I'm at Chelsea. I'm not entirely sure he's appropriately dressed. Now, I need two things. First of all, not to put my hand on his bottom. Secondly, to go and find some plants. Actually, there's a third thing. I think I need to find somebody whose dress style is a bit more my type of gardening. So basically, it's right on the beach, but we've got these white fences, so I want something to grow up tall against the
yeah, something that will contrast.
Oh, see now here, lavender. I do at least know that. But something a bit taller as well.
Well, we've got a new one here called the Jamesia Americana. It comes from the west coast of America. It's completely hardy, will take anything. And obviously the black stems here up against the white fence will look
It's going to look
beautiful.
absolutely fantastic.
And the little white flowers.
Right, so that's me sorted out with some tall stuff. I'm going to go and find something fragrant now.
That's lovely.
Thanks a lot.
Cheers.
You really identify with this tree. We're both a little bit round, we're both in our mid-50s, and we were both bonsai'd a really long time ago. Sun on the face, the sound of water, happy people in the background, and this. I love this, okay? This is a living wall. Now, I never thought you should do anything with a wine cooler other than put wine in it, but that isn't even the best bit in this garden. I love these. I really want to encourage the wildlife, the little tiny bugs and things into the garden, and these holes are for solitary bees. There is one bit of this garden I haven't fully understood. This is a sort of modern hide where you can look at birds, and here's the window where you're supposed to look out and see the birds. And I think maybe I haven't fully understood how that works. Oh, that smells fantastic. And what is that one called?
That's called Leotutu. That's a modern shrub rose. It's not really a suitable rose for bees because it's very double, too many petals.
Ah, okay.
But what I have got is this lovely rambler up here called Phyllis Fine.
Oh, that's lovely.
Now, being semi-double as well, the actual
day at Chelsea. I have found all the plants I need for my garden and I am so excited about getting started. And I found inspiration. I hope it's going to turn out something like this. It looks classy, it's full of glorious plants, it's got great places for bugs to live. Having said it's everything here, there's one thing that I didn't find. I started out with a naked statue and I still haven't quite found the role model that I'm looking for how I ought to dress in the garden. But no, can't expect Chelsea to provide everything, can you?
Well, everyone has an opinion on the show gardens, including Sandy. She simply loved Adam Frost's garden. The judges, though, have the final say, and this year's Best in Show award went to the Australian nursery Flemings. This morning, Christopher Bradley-Hill, the designer of the Daily Telegraph garden, disagreed with that decision. He's been reported as saying the prize is subjective and should be replaced by a Judge's Choice Award, but he insisted this is not sour grapes. Joe?
Well, I think it is a confused issue here. The RHS, the official line is that there is a point system. If there's a certain amount of golds, then it's all to do with a count back, and it is done on a point system. But I've spoken to a council member and I've spoken to some judges, and they didn't know about this. So it's not. I think the issue here is the transparency of everything. If you're going to do it on a point system, open out all the points, show exactly what people have got and what they got them, you know, for the execution of the garden, the planting, and then they can see it and there will be no issue whatsoever.
But you are judging completely different gardens against one another, which is rather odd in any instance, isn't it? How can a tight, formal garden be judged over the same criteria as something like Fleming's, which is mountainous with rocks and ferns? I suppose what one could say is that everybody knows the rules when they enter. Nobody who's ever won a Best in Show has complained that it's been badly judged. And you could probably see why, you know, if people would say, well, if Christopher had made these points before all the judging, it perhaps would have had more weight than afterwards when he didn't win Best in Show, and that may be why some people say it's sour grapes. So perhaps a bit of diplomacy in there might have worked wonders.
But also so many gold medals out there as well. It must have been tight one way or the other. Well, of course, you can have your say by voting for your favourite garden in the RHS People's Award.
Yeah, and if that wasn't controversial enough, join Nikki and Andy tomorrow at 12:30 on BBC One, when Dermot Gavin's touring the show to tell us what he thinks.
We'll be back tomorrow night at 7:30 on BBC One. See you then.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
By M&G Investments is as addictive this year as it's always been. So this afternoon we're asking why visitors and exhibitors alike find it such a floral magnet. Coming up. Controversial but never boring. Dermot Gavin tells us why he loves Chelsea and can't keep away.
I wasn't worried about gold. I was worried about, I suppose I wanted to change the world.
Dazzling dianthus. Simon Lycett is here with a tribute to the woman dubbed Queen of Carnations. And perennial favourite. Plantsman Roy Lancaster explains why the judges love a geranium called Roseanne. Well, Andy, it might be raining, but it's not going to dampen our spirits, is it?
It certainly isn't.
It's been such a wonderful week, but as we get to the Saturday, I always wonder what's going to happen to these magnificent gardens and the plants in the Great Pavilion.
Yeah, well, it could be really sad to see them all dismantled, but the great news is that some of these gardens are going to go off and have a new life. For example, the Ferrer Stop the Spread garden is going to be rebuilt in Bristol Zoo.
Lovely to think it's going to go somewhere else. The Royal Bank of Canada, the Blue Water Roof Garden, that's going to Aberdeen Royal Infirmary apparently, so good news there.
And then the plants in Susanna Hunter's garden are going to be carefully packaged up and sent off to a new therapy centre for children, which is run by a brilliant organisation called Kids Company.
I know them well, they do marvellous work. And of course, if you're lucky to come to Chelsea on a Saturday, the great sell-off where it all goes a little bit mad, doesn't it? You can take home a little bit of Chelsea yourself.
That's right, well, so many of the plants in the gardens and almost everything
in the pavilion seems to be sold off, and you just see everyone taking it home and giving it a new life.
Me included. I've got my eye on a couple of orchids already. Now, this afternoon, we're asking some of Chelsea's regular exhibitors to share their memories with us. And in the Great Pavilion, where it's dry, those memories stretch far beyond the British Isles, with many overseas growers making their annual pilgrimage to the show. Anne-Marie Powell's been to meet them and see what offerings they've bought this year.
When I come to Chelsea, all I have to do is choose my favourite outfit, put on some lipstick and jump on the train. But some visitors have to make a whole lot more effort. So Bernard, this is Trinidad and Tobago's 19th year at Chelsea.
Yes.
But you're first as their lead designer.
Yes.
But logistically, just getting here with all of these beautiful plants and flowers, how do you manage that?
We had to go to all the different growers all over the country. They came, brought their stuff to the society, and it took us between 2 to 3 days to clean, box every flower one by one. We had to layer everything with tissue and shredded paper, especially anthuriums. And you could only pack so much anthuriums on one layer at a time. And because of a lot of the heliconias, the boxes had to be big.